You, yes, you, in the pristine white toga. You think you look dignified. You have no idea what's in that fabric. Because Rome had no soap. None. And the way they got your toga this white involves a vat, bare feet, and gallons of aged human urine. Not metaphorically. Literally. Workers stood ankle-deep in tubs of stale pee, stomping wool like grapes in a wine press. This wasn't some backstreet secret. It was a licensed trade, a real industry, with its own name, fulling. Here's the part that should unsettle you. It worked. Genuinely, chemically worked. Stale urine breaks down through bacteria into ammonia, an alkaline compound that cuts grease and whitens fabric. This is documented chemistry, not folklore, not a myth passed down for laughs. Raw wool comes off a sheep coated in lanolin, a thick, natural grease. Left alone, that grease traps dirt, dulls color, and refuses to take dye. Someone has to strip it out. Ammonia does that job better than plain water ever could. And here's the twist nobody expects. Fresh urine wasn't good enough. Fullers wanted it old, weeks old. The longer it sat, the more ammonia developed. Aged, reeking, thoroughly used urine was, quite literally, the premium product. Now ask yourself why any of this mattered enough to build an industry around. Because in Rome, the toga wasn't clothing. It was a legal statement. Only male citizens could wear it. Whiteness signaled status, dignity, respectability, everything Rome valued. A dingy, gray, stained toga wasn't just embarrassing, it was almost disqualifying. If you wanted to look like you mattered in Roman society, your clothes had to be spotless, and spotless had a price, measured in vats of urine, not silver. So, an entire profession sprang up to solve this problem. The full-ons. Laundry wasn't a chore done at home. It was outsourced to specialists who ran actual workshops, the fullonica, dedicated entirely to cleaning and finishing cloth for a paying public. These weren't small operations. In Pompeii alone, buried by Vesuvius and perfectly preserved, archaeologists have found multiple fullonicae, full-scale industrial workplaces, complete with basins, treading stalls, drainage channels, and staff who did this for a living, every single day. Picture the smell first. Then picture the sound, bare feet slapping wet wool against stone, over and over, for hours. This was manual, physical, unglamorous labor, the industrial backbone of Roman fashion, running on human waste and human effort. None of this was hidden or shameful in daily life. It was simply how a city of hundreds of thousands of people kept its clothes clean. Somebody had to do it, and somebody had to figure out where all that urine was even going to come from. Rome had an answer. Step inside a fullonica, and it doesn't look like a laundromat. It looks like a factory floor, lined with tubs, thick with fumes, and echoing with the sound of bare feet slapping wet wool. The workers are called fullons. Their job, stand in a small stone stall called a cella, ankle-deep in urine-soaked cloth, and stomp, for hours. Think grape treading, except the liquid isn't wine. It's aged human waste. Each fuller works alone in his own cellar, one of a row built side by side, like a grim assembly line of individual wine presses. No talking, no rest. Just tread, 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 until the grease lifts and the fabric turns pale. After treading comes rinsing, clean water flushing out the ammonia and grime. Then brushing and carding, working the fibers by hand to loosen dirt the urine mist. This is manual labor, repeated, at industrial scale, every single day. Next, bleaching. Full ones stretch damp cloth over wicker frames, then burn sulfur underneath. The fumes, sulfur dioxide, chemically whiten the wool. It's toxic, it's harsh, and it actually works. Rome had industrial bleach before it had soap. Fuller's earth, a pale absorbent clay, gets rubbed into the fibers too, soaking up leftover grease and boosting the whiteness. Urine, sulfur, and clay, three separate technologies, stacked together just to get one toga properly clean. The last step belongs to a plant. Fuller's teasel, a spiny, brush-like flower head, gets dragged across the finished cloth to raise the nap, that soft, fuzzy texture on quality wool. The plant is still named after this exact job. None of this is guesswork. Walk into Pompeii's Follonica of Stephanus on the Via dell'Abbondanza, and the whole operation is frozen in place. Basins, treading stalls, even a private latrine built to feed urine straight into the business. A former private house, gutted and converted into a laundry. Somebody looked at a family home and thought, perfect place for vats of urine and a rotating crew of barefoot stompers. Business is business. For the fuller picture, literally, go to the Follonica of Veranius Hypsaeus. Its owners commissioned a painted fresco showing the whole process, panel by panel, treading, brushing, framing. Antiquity's closest thing to a documentary photo. That fresco now hangs in the Naples Archaeological Museum. Historians study it the way you'd study a photograph of a real assembly line, because that's essentially what it is. Rome's textile industry caught mid-shift 2,000 years ago. And here's the part people miss. Fulling wasn't just laundry. Brand new wool cloth, straight off the loom, had to go through this exact same process before it could be worn. Fullers weren't cleaners. They were manufacturers. So this whole grim, ammonia-soaked operation sits at the foundation of Roman textile production, not off to the side of it, which raises the obvious question. A city this size, running on this much urine, where does it all come from? The answer is everywhere. Rome doesn't rely on volunteers with weak bladders. It builds infrastructure. Clay pots sit at street corners, outside workshops, at busy intersections. Public receptacles for one purpose only. Passers-by use them. Nobody thinks twice. It's civic plumbing, Roman style. Collectors do the rounds like a city-wide utility service. What they gather isn't waste, it's inventory. Stale urine is worth more than fresh. The longer it sits, the more ammonia it produces. An entire city's bladders are quietly feeding an industrial supply chain. Nobody advertises, but everyone uses. This makes urine a genuine traded commodity. Bought, sold, transported, stockpiled, exactly like grain or wine. There's a market for it, which means, sooner or later, there's a government looking at that market and asking the only question governments ever ask: can we tax this? Enter Vespasian, emperor from 69 to 79 CE, a general who clawed his way to the throne after a brutal civil war, and a man with zero patience for pretense. He looks at the urine trade, already running, already profitable, and imposes a tax on it, the vectigal urinae. Historians actually argue about whether this tax was brand new or a revival of something older, possibly dating back to Nero. Disputed detail. What isn't disputed? Vespasian is the emperor history remembers for it, and he leaned into that reputation rather than away from it. His son Titus was not a fan. According to the Roman biographer Suetonius, Titus told his father that taxing something this undignified was beneath the office of emperor. Urine collection bankrolling the imperial treasury. It embarrassed him. So Vespasian answers him with a prop. He takes a coin, straight from the tax's first proceeds, and holds it under his son's nose. He asks whether it smells. Titus says no, and there it is. Point made, argument over. Money carries no trace of where it came from. That's the whole lesson. Later generations distilled it into 3 Latin words: pecunia non olet. Money doesn't stink. It's one of the most quoted phrases to survive from Rome, and it started as a joke about pee. Here's the flag, because accuracy matters more than a clean punchline. Suetonius records the core anecdote, but not that exact three-word phrase. Pecunia non olet is a later summary, tradition's shorthand for the scene, not something Vespasian was ever recorded actually saying aloud. The core story, though, the tax, the objection, the coin, is genuinely transmitted history, not internet folklore. It's one of the best documented anecdotes we have about how a Roman emperor thought about money, dignity, and where to draw lines that apparently didn't need drawing. And the joke outlived the empire by 2,000 years. Public street urinals in Italy are still called Vespasiani. In France, they're Vespasiennes. Every time someone uses one, they're unknowingly quoting a tax dispute between an emperor and his disapproving son. So the tax stuck, the trade stayed legal and lucrative, and the pots kept filling on street corners across the empire. Which brings us back to the workshop floor, because somebody still has to turn all that collected ammonia into clean, white wool. Because fulling wasn't some backstreet embarrassment. In Pompeii, fullones show up in painted political graffiti, endorsing candidates for public office by name. That means the launderers were organized enough to matter as a voting bloc. A trade built on foot-stomped urine had enough clout to publicly back a magistrate. Not a shameful fringe job, a guild with a voice, a reputation, and apparently votes worth courting. On Pompeii's forum stands the building of Eumachia, funded by a wealthy priestess named Eumachia. Tradition long held this was the Fullers' Guild headquarters, their civic clubhouse. Modern archaeologists increasingly doubt that story. The guild headquarters theory is contested, maybe wishful reading of old evidence. What we know for certain is smaller, messier, and buried in ash. What's certain is Vesuvius. In 79 CE, it buried Pompeii under ash and pumice, and in doing so, it preserved Philonicae intact, walls, tubs, basins, even painted scenes of the work itself. That disaster is why we know anything real about this trade at all. Dozens of Philonicae have been identified across the Roman world, exact counts disputed, but Pompeii's cluster is unmatched. In one workshop, a painted fresco survives, now in the Naples Museum, showing Fullones mid-shift, treading cloth, brushing it, stretching it on a frame, a snapshot of the job, frozen for 2,000 years. It's the closest thing antiquity left us to a photograph of Laundry Day. No captions needed. You can watch the entire ammonia-soaked process, painted in ochre and red, straight from the workshop wall. So picture the finished product. A citizen steps into the forum in a toga so white it seems to glow. That whiteness is his legal identity. Citizenship, status, dignity, all draped in cloth. Nobody at that moment is thinking about the vat. Nobody's thinking about bare feet churning stale urine, sulfur smoke stinging their eyes, a slave or a freedman standing knee-deep in ammonia for hours. But that vat is exactly where the whiteness came from. No workshop, no toga, no urine, no citizenship uniform. The most respectable garment in the ancient world had the least respectable origin story imaginable. And that's the joke Rome apparently found funny too. A city obsessed with appearances built its entire visual language of respectability on something everyone produced for free, every single day, without even trying. The cleanest-looking people in the ancient world got that way through the dirtiest process anyone ever industrialized. That's not an insult to Rome. That's just how the toga actually got white. So next time someone tells you history smells like roses, remember Rome's brightest symbol of dignity came out of a tub of aged pee, trodden barefoot by working men. If that surprised you, subscribe for more history that stinks in the best way.